Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living your life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Let's find out. Welcome to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We live in a time of tremendous change, and one of the things that is easy to observe is just how much people are becoming increasingly stuck in their head. The media is constantly bombarding us with fear-mongering that causes our vibration to sink and for us to retreat into our own minds out of fear. Likewise, the use of technology, or possibly overuse of technology, keeps us living in our mind more than ever, locked in our head. And with all of the isolation of lockdowns and quarantines, people are becoming more and more stuck in their head and resorting to intellectual stimulation instead of being out in the world and getting actual real experiences. Not to mention, those of us living in the West live in a culture that is geared towards stimulating and boosting everyone's individual ego. Due to all of this, there's a tremendous increase in suffering right now. Look around. I'm sure you've noticed it by now. You may be feeling it personally. So today, I would like to address suffering and the ordinary mind, and a few practical tips on how you can avoid or alleviate this suffering. Now, if you've been around the spiritual circles for any amount of time, you have most likely been introduced to the idea of suffering. It is the ordinary mind that suffers from the ailments of the mind, which are being referred to here as suffering. So let's examine just a few types of suffering that are referred to with this term. I'm going to draw upon a few that are not only relevant for the times we're in, but common as well. So let's begin with the first one. Let's look at boredom. Boredom is the product of a dull, undisciplined mind. And this reflects the idea of the ordinary mind. We see things like the afflictions of ego, all of the different types of afflictions that come with the ego. We see a lack of mindfulness with an increase in mindlessness. And of course, this all leads to a low vibration. But before we go deeper into that, let's also look at the idea of the ordinary mind, because the ordinary mind here is not meant to be a derogatory term. It's not a judgment. It's merely just an accurate term. The ordinary mind refers to the quality of mind that is normal for human beings, regardless of race, gender, and so on. It's just the state of the human mind. The ordinary mind is a state of mind that has not been positively impacted through spiritual practice. It has not been elevated. It has not been transformed. This is a mind that has not attained a state of mindfulness or awakening through the practices or meditation. The way I like to explain the ordinary mind is basically any human's mind that has not successfully engaged in the authentic practices of mindfulness and meditation. If you have not undergone specific practices and there has not been a mental transformation that has taken place, then you are of the ordinary mind. As long as the ego is dominant, you are of the ordinary mind. So it's just understanding the starting place. It's understanding the place where everyone is. And all of us have had to start from this place. And it is this that we are referring to as transformation. We are transforming the mind. Once we transform the mind out of the ordinary state, we ourselves become transformed. Living a fully engaged life is only accomplished through transforming the ordinary mind and leaving the normal states of suffering behind. When we attain such things as mindfulness, and as we begin to awaken, our vibration rises, and we ourselves rise out of that suffering and begin enjoying life in an all-new way. This is why in the beginning of every program, I ask you, are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? I've explained this statement before, but I'll do it again. A lot of people are ready. A lot of people want to do it, but not very many people are actually willing to do it. Usually because this transformation will not support the identity that their ego has created for them, and they are clinging to that identity and ego. When I ask about transforming yourself and your life from ordinary, see what I'm saying here? From the ordinary mind to extraordinary, what I'm referring to by extraordinary is the state you attain through mindfulness and meditation. And it is extraordinary. Through that transformation, you become capable of becoming extraordinary and living a fully engaged life. One of the biggest problems is that people of ordinary mind feel that it's normal, feel that it's them. Therefore, they don't recognize the problem. They do not acknowledge that they are of ordinary mind. And if you don't know there's a problem, it's very difficult to fix that problem. So how do we know whether we are or aren't of ordinary mind? Well, we can draw upon some of the examples that I began the show with. Let's look at the first one, in the case of boredom. In many cases, people are saying, I'm bored. I hear this out of adults more than ever. You used to have that as children, right? I can remember telling my mom, I'm bored. I don't know what to do, right? She'd say, you got a bedroom full of stuff, go figure it out, or go outside and play. But now I'm hearing this out of adults, and it's very interesting because it's always a contradiction. I'm always hearing adults saying how I'm so busy, I don't get a chance to sit down, I can't do anything I want to do, I'm so busy. And then in the very next breath, they're complaining that they're bored. See this uneasiness? This is the ordinary mind. See, a mindful mind doesn't get bored. How's that? How's that for a cure? The cure to boredom, mindfulness. Engage in the mindfulness practices, and then guess what? You'll never be bored again. Here's an interesting conversation. So the first person says, I'm really bored. And the second person says, I really don't get bored anymore. I have too many interests. I enjoy learning new languages, studying martial arts, engaging in meditation, working out, learning new recipes and cooking, reading and studying various spiritual texts. There are so many interests that I have, so many things that I enjoy doing. My problem is never that I get bored. My problem is never having enough time to actually fit it all in a day. And the first person responds with, oh, I have lots of things I can do. I have ways to pass the time. But if you understand, these two people are talking on two very different wavelengths. They're not speaking of the same thing. Allow me to explain this. When you are mindful and you have these incredible interests, things that you just feel passionately about and enjoy, and notice that all of those things that the second person said they were interested in doing are all things that benefit their life. Sitting around watching Netflix and YouTube or reading trashy novels or things like that, those things don't enrich your life. When you are mindful, not only do you not get bored, but you fill your life with very beneficial interests that all serve to enrich the sense of wholesomeness in your life. They benefit you physically, mentally, spiritually, vibrationally. The first person is referring to things that they have that they can do, ways to pass the time. Other phrases similar to this we hear are, yeah, I'm wasting time, I'm passing the time, I'm killing time, right? All of these type of things are indicators that you are of the ordinary mind. You are wasting time. You are wasting your life. A mindful person doesn't have things they just do. It isn't just something to do. It's a passion. It's got purpose. This is the big difference. So my point is, hopefully you can see clearly how these two people are not referring to the same things, although they think they are. They believe they're referring to the same thing. It's not at all the same. Look at it this way. This is a great example to give credit to my wonderful wife, because she gave me this in a conversation. She says, kind of like baking a cake, right? When we are of ordinary mind, it's likened to making a cake from a boxed mix, right? It doesn't require any special skill or knowledge. Anyone can do it. Just pour the ingredients out of the box, follow the instructions, and you'll have, hopefully, some kind of cake. On the other hand, if you actually bake a cake from scratch, this is an entirely different thing. It requires a sense of knowledge, a sense of experience. It takes time in order for it to be made correctly. And the big difference is this. The person of ordinary mind uses the cake mix, the boxed mix, the fake food, as a way to get through the experience. They just want it done. They want to get to the end. They just want the cake done because they look at baking a cake as a chore. The mindful person enjoys the process, the experience of baking itself. Sure, they get the benefit of the tasty cake at the end, but they are enjoying every step of the process. They don't care how long it takes. They don't care how big of a mess they make. They don't care what they have to clean up. That's all just part of the process, but they are engaged in the actual experience. You see, this is why I talk about the importance of experience in my book, because it indicates that you are in the moment, that you are mindful, that you are not of ordinary mind. See the difference here? And it's very interesting because oftentimes both people baking these cakes will say, hey, look, I made a cake. But when we have proper perception, we understand that only one person truly made a cake, and that was the person who did so from scratch. The other person just poured some prepackaged ingredients in a bowl, mixed them up, put them in the oven. Everything was done for you. But the ordinary mind will perceive it as though it was something they did from scratch. It's very interesting how easily we can be deceived by our own mind. And what I find quite fascinating is how those of ordinary mind will opt for the cake mix because it's quicker. And then when they get done making the cake, they're bored. We also have things like the afflictions of ego. And I've covered so many of these in past episodes, so I won't rehash all of those here. Although one I would like to focus on, especially considering how much we've had in regards to the quarantines and lockdowns and things. It's very interesting how often you don't really care about going out or doing something until you're told you can't. And then it drives you nuts because that's all you want to do and you feel so confined, right? This is how the ego works. I may not even think about the fact that I want something or want to go somewhere until I'm told that I can't have it or can't go there. And then suddenly that's all I want, right? That's all I want to do. That's all I want to have. So this is another way that we recognize the ordinary mind. It is the lack of acceptance for what is. So whether you find yourself suffering from boredom, fear, uneasiness, or any other state of mind, realize this is all from the ordinary mind. And when you acknowledge this, when you are able to see this clearly, then you get a glimpse at the fact that maybe this is not the state of mind I want to live in. And that in itself can be a life-changing moment. And for those of you on the path, already engaging in mindfulness, you may notice that then you have a hard time identifying with other people. Maybe people in your peer group or whatever. And this is the same thing as the conversation that I submitted as an example earlier, where these people, one person's talking about things that are very beneficial, that they're passionate about, they have these interests they do every day, and then you have someone else who says, well, I can find something to do, right? I can do a puzzle, I can color in an adult coloring book, I can, find something to do. But those things are just ways to pass the time, to waste the time. But the person of ordinary mind does not realize the difference because they don't know there even is a difference. They don't know that a different state can exist. So they relate it to what they know. And what they know is only that of the ordinary mind. And it's this that causes a great disconnect when you're speaking to someone. So oftentimes you're trying to help them and you say something to them that is a bit different than something perceived through the ordinary mind. And they can only perceive it through the ordinary mind. So they think you're just talking about something ordinary, right? But it's not the case. And therefore, it's like they can't even hear you. And it isn't that they can't hear you, and it isn't that they're trying to tune you out or whatever. It's they have the ability to hear, but they don't have the ability to truly listen because they cannot relate to that of which you're speaking to them. And this is when we have to employ a little patience and compassion. And that doesn't mean trying to force what you're trying to say to someone because they're just not capable, while in ordinary mind, of understanding it, of hearing it. So sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is to just say nothing. On the note of compassion, we must remember that compassion is not this bleeding heart, focus on our feelings, ridiculousness we're seeing today. That is not actual compassion. True compassion is when we offer our service or wisdom in a way that benefits a person, and it benefits them in the way they truly need it for their greater good, not something that their ego thinks it wants or our ego thinks they want. Compassion is not about pacifying someone's ego any more than it is about pacifying our own. True compassion is giving what is truly needed. And to do so, we must have the wisdom to understand what is truly needed. And that wisdom cannot come from the ordinary mind. One unfortunate phrase I hear thrown around a lot these days is, "People suck." I would offer this. Since spirituality is often referred to as a mirror, one must look a bit more deeply at our own ego in this circumstance. This sort of attitude has really intensified since all of the lockdowns and quarantines. It was there before. I've been hearing it for a couple of years now, especially out of people who are preferring to have pets because they just can't stand people anymore. It's very interesting. I started to see a turnaround in that, where all these, people, lonely people, maybe they're single, their spouse has passed away or whatever, so they have a pet for company, and that's fantastic. But before all of this virus isolation occurred, they were starting to take their pets out, right, for walks and things as a way to try to get other people to interact with them. And this was a good sign because people need mutual human interaction. It's healthy. We're all connected. We're supposed to stay connected. Remaining isolated in our homes is very detrimental to our mental health. Isolating ourselves away like hermits from everyone else is not healthy. It's not beneficial to us. There are some people out in the world, of course, that are bad people. There always has been. There always will be. The mind can become a very diseased thing. But there are also some absolutely fantastic, incredible, loving people out there in the world just waiting to interact with you. Not to mention an entire world of rich experiences just waiting to be had. This is living, right? Being hidden away in our little box of a home is existing. It is not living. So when we speak of compassion, we must remember to be compassionate with ourselves as well. Locking ourselves away is not compassion. Believing that people suck and just hating to be around anyone, this is not allowing us to live a healthy, full life. As I stated at the very start of the show, we are in times of great change. And I feel very optimistic that once we go through the time of change itself, on the other side of this change, maybe we come out with a greater sense of humanity, a sense of humanity that we as a whole in the world have started to lose. But especially here in the West, the more that the ego is inflated, the more that we are stuck in our heads, the more that we isolate ourselves from others, the more our sense of humanity slips away. We must protect and embrace our humanity. And part of humanity is the ability to interact with others, to share a sense of love and appreciation, to be compassionate. And this is one thing that I have seen through this whole virus thing, is I have seen a greater sense of actual compassion coming forward. And I'm not talking about the government checks that they send out. I'm talking about person to person, things that really matter. It's been incredible. And this shows hope for the continued awakening of the great consciousness shift. And through this, the ability to transcend the ordinary mind and to alleviate a lot of suffering in ourselves and in the world. So now seems to be the perfect time for us to ask ourselves, am I of the ordinary mind? And if so, what can I do to begin to transform that mind? And of course, we must also ask ourselves and listen honestly, am I willing to transform my ordinary mind? Am I willing to put in the time? Am I willing to make the effort? Am I willing to set aside all of the distractions and entertainments and other ways of passing time and wasting my life in order to attain this? Am I truly willing? Look at your current actions. That will give you a good indication as to whether or not you are ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from the ordinary mind to something far more extraordinary. Please make sure to visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. Grab your autographed copy of Expansion Mastery and check out all the other good stuff there. Also, make sure that you're sharing this podcast. Hit the like, subscribes, the bells, do all that kind of stuff that they do on social media now. That helps us out. And until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care.